Maybe you've grown bored of playing chords on keys and you're wondering what your hipster friends are using for chord generation. And it turns out they're using neo-Riemannian transforms. And you want to get in on that action. Luckily, the Ornament and Crime has you covered. The Harrington 1200 app in Ornament and Crime's stock firmware provides you a way of generating chords and chord progressions using advanced music theory, but you don't need to know any of that because it takes care of all the complexity. In this video, I'm going to explain how it works, give you some ideas about using it, and some tips and tricks for using it in your patch. Let's look at the interface of the Harrington 1200 app to begin. First of all, we notice it shows a screensaver. You can get to this by long pressing the up button. The screensaver shows the chord being generated. In this case, it's a C major chord. C, E, and G are the notes being generated. Their position around the circle of semitones is shown here. This is divided into 12 points with C being up the top. So we got C, E, and G joined by a nice triangle. That animates as you play chords. It's kind of cool to look at. Doesn't really add much to it than that. The idea is that you send clocks in on the triggers here, and they will perform transforms on this chord. They'll turn into minor chords or diminished chords or all sorts of other things. The chord is output from the B, C, and D outputs, and I'm going to be using those in a moment to set up our voice. Looking through the interface very quickly, you see the chord type, and the current notes. If you press down the left encoder, that changes to a semitones. So C, 4 semitones up is E, 7 semitones up is G. I like it as the notes themselves. You can transpose, you can have that CV mapped. We'll look at that a little later on. Map the octaves, we can change from majors to minors. We play around with chord inversions. We can map that to CV. It's important to have the output mode set to chord here in the screen, because that will then generate a chord on these 3 outputs. The other output is tune, and that lets you tune your oscillators. Now let's wire up a basic patch. We'll start by wiring the outputs to the pitch inputs on the SWN. So each output represents one of the 3 notes in the chord triad. So I'm going to wire those into the pitch inputs here. We won't hear anything until we connect up a gate. So I'm going to connect the gate input to this starfish here, which I'll connect to a gate source in a moment. And I'm going to connect it to this voltage source over here on my Decca. Now, when I open the voltage source, you can hear the oscillators have played a chord. They're playing basically a chord of C. Now let's just turn on this gate. We'll hear the oscillators. They're just playing a very simple sine wave, little bit of reverb and echo from the Zoya over there for fun. And we'll just go through a few quick changes here just to see the impact that changing these parameters have. And then we'll see what happens when we start clocking these transform inputs here using just manual gates on the Decca. And then we'll see what that sounds like. So let's start off. We'll start off with a simple C major chord. We can transpose it up and down by semitones or by octaves. Major to minor. That won't take effect until you send in a trigger pulse. Let's look at the chord inversions. 3 up and down. All of these can be CV mapped. Now that we have the basic voice working, let's try and apply some of these transforms. There are 6 transforms available in the Harrington 1200 app. The first 3 are P, L, and OR. P is called a parallel transform, and it moves the middle third up and down a semicone, so basically it takes a major to a minor or vice versa. The second transform is called the L transform, and it converts a major triad to a minor. The third transform is the OR transform, the relative transform, and it converts a major triad to its relative minor. To trigger each transform, you need to send a clock in on inputs 2, 3, and 4. Input 1 will reset back to the default bass triad. So let's wire these up. This switch will send in the reset. This is going to trigger the P transform. This will trigger the L transform, and this will trigger the OR transform. Now let's open up the gate, listen to the voices, and play some transforms. First, let's do the P transform. See, it's become a minor. Now let's listen to the L transform. And the OR transform. And of course, we can just play these manually. And if I press the first button here, trigger 1 resets me back to my C major chord. Notice as I was pressing these gate buttons, we were seeing these letters change here in the middle. This is the rolling sequence of transforms as they've been applied. The most recent transform was right up the top. The asterisk indicates the reset one. You saw when I pressed OR twice, it generated a minus OR and a plus OR transform. So you're able to keep track using this as a rolling indicator of what transforms are coming through. And of course, this is changing in a nice little kind of animated way while you're applying the transforms. Now, what if you wanted to apply multiple transforms in one step? You've noticed that to do some more complex transformations, I have to do P, L, and or L and P in a certain order. Well, the Harrington app allows you to do that using compound transforms. And these are the N, S, and H transforms. And if you look down here, you'll notice that our trigger type is PL-OR. By default, it takes PL and OR transforms on gates 2, 3, and 4. We can change this to be N, S, H transforms, and these are compound transforms. For example, the N transform is the same as applying OR and then L and then P, so pressing these 3 buttons in that order. The S or slide transform is equivalent to the L, P, and OR, and the H or hexatonic transform is the same as L, then P, and then L again. Now you can only do NSH transforms or PLR transforms. You can't do both in this mode, but in a moment I'm going to show you something really cool when we start using Pam's new workout to clock these randomly. Let's try the NSH transforms. Open the gate. Try the N transform. And back. And the S transform. And again, you see that S showing up there in the middle, and the H transform. I've configured the first 4 outputs of Pam's to generate random gates. They're going to generate them at different intervals, and there's probabilities that they'll skip. So what we'll hear is just a random sequence of gate changes and a reset being sent into these 4 inputs on the Ornament and Crime. So now we're going to go right ahead and do this. We can also put different parameters under CV control. Like most of the apps in Ornament and Crime, even though they have many dozen different parameters available in the app itself, a lot of them can be CV controlled to give you more playability. One of those that I found very useful to play around with is the inversion. So if we map that to CV input 1 here in the menu, I'm just going to plug the output of my manual 4-step sequential switch, which you'll recognize from my other videos. The CV1 input allows for negative and positive values to go in. This only generates positive values, so we won't get the full range. Let's just listen if we turn it on. If we want to have a little bit more control over the changes happening to the chords in the Harrington app, we can use a sequencer. So let's turn to our trusty SQ1 sequencer. We'll connect the gate output from the sequencer, the output of the gate there, to gate the voices. So if I hit play, let's use the CVA output to trigger the P transforms by sending an input in on gate 2. We'll go and make sure we're down here in PLR trigger mode. And we'll use the CVB output to trigger L transforms. We only have 2 outputs on the sequencer, so we can only trigger 2 types of transform. And by selectively enabling and disabling steps in the active step mode on the sequencer, we'll be able to get them to play on and off each other. Let's give it a go. If you have a sequencer that only generates 2 gate outputs, like our SQ1 over here, but you want to have 4 inputs to the Ornament and Crime, you're out of luck. Or are you? There's one mode we haven't explored yet, and that's Euclidean triggering mode. You get to it by going down to trigger type in the menu and changing to Euclid. When you do that, you'll get many more options available underneath. In fact, it's close to 20 new options. But don't be overwhelmed. This is a fairly straightforward mode to understand. We can just explore it using one of the options. The idea behind Euclidean trigger mode is one clock signal can trigger all 6 of those transforms which we saw previously. Every time a clock arrives, a new trigger set is generated for each of the P, L, or N, S, and H Euclidean sequencers. For example, we could have for the P pattern 7 steps, and we might want 5 out of 7 triggers. So every 5 out of 7 triggers, we will get an output to a P transform, which will transform the chord. Let's look at this in action. All we need is one gate clock to come in on any of the inputs, 2, 3, or 4. Let's open the gate. We should see a lot more P transforms than L transforms, and we do, if you watch this display scrolling past here. The idea behind the Euclidean trigger transforms is they simplify sending complex transform patterns into the sequencer. Before I go through wiring up a patch, I'm just going to walk you through what I have in my case, just to show you what each module is going to do. That way, if you don't have the exact same modules, you'll know what to substitute in from what you do have. My case is just a simple small 60 HP case from Modular Maritime in France. I really like this. This lets me build these focus setups. Starting from the left, we have a 4-step sequential switch here from ST Modular, the push. This lets me just send different sequential values out of this output here between 5 volts and 10 volts. You can adjust with this knob, and you can dial in different CV values here. You can switch between 2, 3, or 4 steps, which you cycle through using that button. Really handy for just doing quick CV adjustments on modules. Next over, we have another module from Modular Maritime. This is the Deca. This is something I just got this week. It lets you send out gates when you press these buttons here, momentary gates. We're going to use those in our patch. You also have voltage sources, so you can dial this to an exact voltage source. It has a little indicator here. They're not totally precise, but close enough. So you can set that to say 5 volts, turn that on, and this output here is now, for example, giving you a gate. Hit it again, and you've got a gate turned off. Same here, turn it on and off. Then we have everybody's favorite, Pam's new workout. You're going to be using this for clocking and also for modulation, and that's really should be in everyone's case. Certainly if you're building a case this small, gives you an awful lot of bang for your buck. Then we've got our Ornament and Crime, which is the star of the show today. We're going to be running the Harrington 1200 app. The oscillator voice we're using today is this 4MS Spherical Wavetable Navigator. This looks intimidating, but we're just going to use it as a very simple 3-voice oscillator. It's actually a 6-voice oscillator. It's a wavetable oscillator, and it has incredible features in it. I'm only just digging into it. I love it, the sound I'm getting out of it, but today it's just going to be playing the role of a simple 3-voice oscillator. And this is my output stage here. It's from Bufacco. It's just a nice modular to line level converter. I like this one because it has a headphone jack, and also you can switch between an external input, so you can patch in your iPad, for example. Got this lovely blank here, which I got from a vendor on Etsy. I'll include a link down below. And then I'm just going to route the audio through the Empress Zoya here, just to add a little bit of delay and reverb effect onto it, just to kind of make everything sound nice. I hope you found that this demystified the Harrington 1200 app somewhat, and that you got some useful tips and tricks out of it for using in your own patches. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and leave me some comments and share your thoughts in the comment section down below. Ring the bell if you'd like to be notified about more tutorial videos I'm making in the future.